If we really want to get what Jesus was talking about, we've got to understand the world he was talking to. So let's do that. Let's jump back 2,000 years and really see what life was like on the ground. So when you think about that time, what's the first image that pops into your head? Is it those calm, peaceful paintings of shepherds chilling with their sheep? Or was it something else entirely? That's the big question we're going to dig into.
And right away, you see this huge difference. On one hand, you have the myth, right? This idea of a simple, peaceful life. But the reality? Oh, it was a whole other story. We're talking heavy taxes, Roman soldiers everywhere, just constant hardship. And getting this difference is absolutely crucial.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture. This was not a peaceful place. Not at all. It was a land under some serious pressure, both politically and socially. And pretty much all of that pressure was coming from one place, Rome. Basically, Israel was occupied territory. I mean, just picture that for a second. Roman soldiers walking down your streets, Roman laws telling you what to do, and Roman taxes. Man, they were just draining everything you had. You can imagine the kind of tension that creates, right? Just this constant simmer right under the surface. And when you live with that kind of tension, you start to hope, really hope, for a rescuer. That's where this powerful longing for the Messiah came from. But, not everyone agreed on what he'd be like. Some wanted a king, a new David. Others wanted a warrior to just kick the Romans out. But the one thing they all had in common, a deep, desperate hope to be saved.
All right, so that's the big political scene. But what did all that pressure actually feel like for an ordinary person? Let's zoom right in, from the empire to the household, and look at the daily grind.
Yeah, forget everything you know about modern comforts. For most folks, home was a super simple, pretty cramped space. We're talking 1 or 2 small rooms for the entire family. Life was all about what was practical, not what was comfortable. You slept on a mat on the floor, that was it. And this idea of work-life balance didn't exist.
There was no work and free time. Survival was the full-time job. Every single day was this relentless cycle of hard physical labor. Carry water, grain, bake bread, and then do it all over again the next day.
So what were they eating? Well, it was incredibly basic. Bread was the main event, every single day. You'd fill it out with some fish, maybe some olives, figs, lentils. But look at that tiny little sliver for meat. That tells you everything. Meat was a huge luxury, something you'd only see on a very, very special occasion. And this part is so important. When Jesus starts telling his stories, his parables, he's not using big, abstract philosophical words, no way. He's talking about nets and seeds and vineyards and harvests. He's talking about the stuff people dealt with every single day. He spoke the language of their struggle and their hope. Okay, so let's add another layer to this picture. Faith. It was at the absolute heart of everything. But don't think for a second that it was simple. It was vibrant, for sure, but man, was it complicated. You had the massive, grand temple in Jerusalem, right? That was the center of the universe for big festivals and sacrifices. But for the average person, day-to-day faith happened much closer to home. It happened at the local synagogue. That was the real community hub for prayer and for learning. And yeah, faith was definitely not a monolith. You had all these different groups with really different takes on things. You had the Pharisees, who were all about the details of religious law. You had the Sadducees, the temple elite, and then you had the Zealots, who were like, let's just fight Rome. And the average person, they were just trying to figure it all out, stuck right in the middle. So you've got all these rules, right? Rules from Rome, rules from your own religion. And in a world like that, it's just so easy for people to get lost, to fall right through the cracks. So who were these people? Let's take a look. We're talking about the poor, the sick, people with devastating diseases like leprosy who were total outcasts. Tax collectors, everybody hated them because they worked for Rome. And women who had very few rights. In a society this rigid, you had a massive part of the population that felt completely invisible, totally voiceless. Okay, so this is the world we've been painting. A world of intense pressure, of backbreaking labor, of social lines drawn in the sand. And it's right into the middle of this world that Jesus shows up. And when you get the context, you suddenly realize just how radical his message and his actions really were. And I'm not exaggerating here. This was a society built on these really strict lines of who's in and who's out,
who's clean and who's unclean. And what Jesus did, it wasn't just different, it was genuinely shocking to people.
Just think about it for a second. He didn't just talk about the poor from a distance. He went and spoke to them. He didn't just feel sorry for the sick. He reached out and touched them. He went out of his way to find the people that everyone else was trying to get away from.
So much of the world was filled with people who just felt completely poor and powerless. And then he says this, "Blessed are the poor." Can you just imagine hearing that for the first time? He's not promising them a lottery ticket. He's telling them that God sees them, that God values them, right in the middle of their struggle.
Life for them was just drenched in fear. Fear of Rome, fear of getting sick, fear of not having enough food for your family.
And then he says, "Do not be afraid." I mean, that's not just some nice casual thing to say. For people who were drowning in anxiety, that was a lifeline. And really, this is the whole point. Jesus didn't show up in some perfect, peaceful storybook world. He stepped right into the messy, gritty, painful reality of human struggle. And that's why his message hits so hard. It was for that world, the real world. So he stepped into their reality back then. And that just leaves us with one final thought, right? Does he still do the same for us today, in our reality?